think the most horrifying part of this video is my sleep schedule. It's like 5 a.m. right now. This is the first video I'm filming in October, so I thought it'd be a pretty good idea to kind of do like a horror Halloween type thing. I am not a horror writer. I'm not really that much into the horror genre. I don't really like reading horror books or horror movies, and I definitely don't like horror games. Five Nights at Freddy's tormented me for a long time as a kid. Speaking of Five Nights at Freddy's, I lost the numbers game in college once, and my punishment with my friends was I had to go into the Five Nights at Freddy's game in VR, and I only played for like one level, and it was the worst experience of my life. Honestly, I wanted to cry. It was supposed to just be the first level that my friends accidentally put me in nightmare mode. And yeah, that definitely spawned some nightmares for me. I hate Five Nights at Freddy's. What the hell was I talking about? Right, since it's October, I thought it'd be fun to kind of write a horror short story. Even though I'm a sci-fi author and I don't really write horror, I really enjoy exploring other genres. So yeah, in this video, I'm basically gonna try to write the best horror story I possibly can. In this video, I'm basically gonna go through my horror writing process. Keep in mind, this is not advice. I have no idea what I'm doing. In general, when it comes to writing, I basically have no idea what I'm doing, but definitely when it comes to horror. Also, really quickly, since I just thought of it, I know I mentioned Halloween before. This is not my Halloween special. The only reason I even bring that up is last month I was kind of teasing about my Halloween special and I really hyped it up, so I don't want people to be disappointed with this casual writing video. In this video, I'm just writing a horror story and then maybe reading it out to you. Now for my Halloween special, I'm planning on reading as many horror stories and books as I possibly can in 24 hours and kind of just going through that. It is a simple premise, but as I said before, I do spook pretty easily, so it should be pretty fun. Speaking of which, if you have any horror recommendations for me to read, drop them below. That's enough of this horrendous intro, let's get writing. I'm sorry, that was so cringe. Speaking of horror stories, I almost accidentally just deleted that entire take I just took and I would have had to start this entire video over. I am so grateful for the recently deleted feature. Anyway, when it comes to my writing process, the first thing I like to do is actually read a couple short stories. I don't know what exactly it is, but reading other stories just kind of gets my creative juices flowing. For this writing session, I'm going to read a couple winners from Reedsy Horror Writing Contest. When it comes to reading short stories, I really like to read these Reedsy entries because you find authors that you otherwise would have never found. And I think it's really cool to read stories from lesser known authors. So I read a couple of the short story winners and they were all really interesting. I think it's so cool to read work from authors who are still trying to find their craft. That being said, while reading these short stories, I didn't come up with any ideas for what I'm gonna write. So it's time for plan B. Just stare at the page until I come up with something. Actually, recently I did this challenge to write as many fall writing prompts as I possibly could. I'm just gonna use one of those. Let's see what I got here that fits a horror theme. 4 teens enter the woods. One comes out. Every fall in a small town, a child goes missing. Nah. The pumpkin you carved just blinked. That could be fun. An hour after chewing the gummies, he realized they were in fact not candy. That could be funny. I'm gonna try to combine some of these and see what happens. So after about 2 hours of writing, I have a story, I guess. To be honest, I don't really like it, but it's a start. Of course, being a sci-fi author by heart, I had to find a way to kind of implement sci-fi into it. I basically ended up with a story about getting trapped in VR while you're high, and well, I guess it's a story. I think the premise I came up with was pretty cool, but I don't think I executed it well at all. To be honest, that writing session was really tough. I feel like I couldn't get into a rhythm. I feel like maybe I'm being a little too hard on myself too, because the stories I read before I wrote this were really intriguing, and this story is just blah. But even though this horror story I wrote completely sucks, I'm gonna read it out loud for you and maybe you have some pointers to help me out. Just know this is not a polished story at all. It is not indicative of my writing abilities. But yeah, I guess it's scary story time. And that's why you should never ever put a virtual reality headset on while you're high, David said, leaning back on the... Fuck, I can't read out loud. I'm so bad at reading out loud, it's not even funny. And that's why you should never ever put on a virtual reality headset while you're high, David said, leaning back on the logs he sat and... I can't, this is the first sentence. I can't even say the first sentence. I can't read. And that's why you should never ever put on a virtual reality headset on while you're high, David said, leaning back on the log that he sat on and looking back and forth at us. How did I do this when I was 12 in class? I think it's tougher because it's something I wrote. And that's why you should never ever put on a virtual reality headset on while you're high, David said, leaning back on the log that he sat on and looking back and forth at us like he's told the scariest story we've ever heard. The story was scary for sure, but only because it highlighted just how little truly went on in David's mind. I think you've had enough, I said, reaching over and snatching the blunt from his hand. As I brought it to his lips and took a puff, he tried to take it back, but I leaned away before he could get it back. I barely got any. What the hell? He complained. Dude, our friend John interjected. You just told a story about people taking their heads off because they still think they're in a virtual reality headset. I think you smoked plenty. I coughed after taking a massive hit. Yeah, David, I actually want to play some VR tonight. Last time you got too high and passed out on the couch. It's like you haven't listened to my warning at all, he said, starting off menacingly. Fuck. It's like you haven't listened to my warning at all, he said, staring off menacingly before cracking himself up as he continued his sentence. After a few minutes, he stood up. Yeah, let's go play now. I have a few... The word is on the page. Why am I reading other words? This is genuinely so humiliating. You know what it is? I'm anticipating what the words are going to be before I read them. After a few moments, he stood up. Yeah, let's go play now. I have an early class tomorrow anyway. I shook my head, dropping the small bit that was left of the blunt and smothering it with my shoe. As we walked back into our dorm suite, I was glad I decided to wear my sweatshirt. It was a bit chilly, even for an autumn night. As we approached our dorm building, I could not help but notice how quiet the campus was. It was a bit later in the evening, but on this night it was silent, and as if we were the only students on campus. I didn't really feel that high. In fact, I was thinking of taking another hit or something when I arrived back in the room, when the world glitched. It was a small glitch. Walking towards the entrance of the dorm, the world jittered and then replayed a single instance of time. In essence, I took the same step twice and did not move. The odd sensation of it caused me to stop walking. David and John took a few steps before turning to look at me. Or should I say their avatars turned to look at me? I can't be sure anymore. Until that slight glitch while I was walking, all this seemed real. So did the previous layer, the sick game. Are you good? John asked me. I'm too stunned to speak. I've got to take my headset off. I bring my hand to my face only to feel my hair. Stop freaking yourself out. This isn't a video game. You're just high. I'm just trying to reassure myself that everything's alright, but I'm not so confident it is. I thought the last layer was real until I saw him. Aaron? John said, stepping towards me. Are you alright? I nodded slowly. In the last iteration, I ran away from him and went back into the woods. It was there that the shadow man crept up on me, but I remembered to take off the headset just before he could get me. Yeah, I said, nodding slowly. I'm just higher than I thought. I try to believe my own words. Of course this is all my imagination. I follow my friends into the elevator and we make our way into the dorm suite. Okay, let's play some games, John said. Ready? He asked. Imagine if my story was real, David said, turning towards me and smiling. We put the headsets on after smoking, we just get trapped in some infinite void. He laughed, but I'm no longer certain if he was laughing at his stupid joke. I think he was mocking me. The more I zoned in on his smile, the more sinister it appeared. We've played VR so many times, John pointed out. Stop messing around and get your headset on. John and David made their way into their rooms. I stood looking down the hallway at my door. Aaron, get on, David called out. I started to walk towards my room, but again, the world seemed to jitter. We've played VR high so many times. I tried to dismiss that silly thought, but no matter what I said or did, or where I looked, my anxiety levels began to rise. Get on, a voice said. It sounded like my own. It came from the bedroom. Come on, Aaron, put on the headset. You know you want to, the voice from the room said. I wish I had run back into the woods when I had the chance. No, this isn't a game. If this is real, nothing's gonna stop me from going back. I turned back towards the front door of our dorm suite and opened it to escape, but the hallway is no longer there. There's nothing but an empty void. It's true. I'm in the headset. I collapsed onto the floor, feeling for the device on my face. All I feel is my eyelids, brows, and nose. I can't take it off. This isn't even fair. I didn't put the headset on after I smoked. Or did I? The common room begins to despawn, pixel by pixel, and I'm forced to retreat back to the hallway leading up to my room. On my way back, I look into the bathroom mirror before it too despawns, and I see my reflection. My eyes and nose are covered by a virtual reality headset. Pressing my hands at my temples, I attempt to pull it off, but all my effort to do is yank my skin up. The spawning pixels into the void are nearly at my feet, so I retreat back into my room and slam the door. I'm holding the door shut with my back to it when I see him, or I guess I should say when I see me. There I am, sitting on a swiveling chair at the center of my room, drooling with a virtual reality headset on. On the desk by my nightstand, I see the loose gummies on the table. They warp as the room glitches. The door behind me begins to vanish into the void like the rest of the room. Aaron, get on the game. Distorted versions of David and John's voices say from the other room. At least their voices come from where their rooms were. Everything but the floor of my room surrounding the desk chair where the other me sits in the headset has been consumed by the void. Looking at myself slouched back in the chair wearing the virtual reality headset, I remember taking the edible before placing my headset on. No, I mumbled to myself. No, this is crazy. I almost fall into the void as the floor behind me continues to fade to nothingness. Everything is gone except for a 4-foot radius around the chair where my body slouches in the headset. Take it off, I called out. It doesn't respond, so I reach for the headset myself and try to pull it off, but it's stuck to the other man's head. Take it off, I yell, gripping the headset tighter and pulling on it. With each tug, I feel pain shooting through my own neck. Still, the void continues to spread towards me, so I continue pulling. The head rips off my body as my vision enters the void. I try to scream out, but I cannot. And that's why you should never ever put a virtual reality headset on while you're high, David said, leaning back on a log that he sat on and looking back and forth at us as he told the scariest story we've ever heard. The story was scary for sure, but only because it highlighted just how little truly went on in David's mind. Holy crap, it legitimately took me 19 minutes to read that story out loud. It's only 1,300 words and it took me 19 whole minutes. For a YouTuber, I'm so bad at reading out loud and just talking to cameras. At least the fact that I cannot read distracts from the fact that my story absolutely sucks. Final thoughts, this was a fun experiment, even if it did tank my confidence as a writer and a reader. Even though I don't love the story that I wrote, I do like the fact that I did try to go outside the box. I've been doing a lot of experimenting recently with this whole looping story format, and even though this isn't the best one I told, I'm glad I'm still working on it. Writing a looping story is tough, so I'm willing to give myself a little bit of slack. Just a little bit. Reading that story out loud, there are definitely areas where I need to expand upon. That mysterious figure in the woods kind of came out of nowhere. I also feel like some of the pacing just felt really rushed. But yeah, I guess it could have been worse. Also, I'm gonna put the story in the comments in case you want to read it without my terrible reading out loud skills. Definitely gotta work on those. One thing I really liked about this writing experiment of writing horror is I feel like when you write horror, you really have to kind of prey on the reader's emotions. Like, writing that story is a goal of mine to make the reader feel uneasy. I don't think I accomplished it at all, but I think it's good to kind of experiment with that. Let me know what you think, and don't be afraid to be mean. In fact, taking some criticism would actually be good for me. Be a little mean. Anyway, that's all I got. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.